Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Wednesday, the 14th of June, comes to you from London. And we start just by looking at this chart, which I posted on LinkedIn this morning, of the 2-year UK Gilt. And this was the Truss Kwarteng mini budget spike, and we surged past that yesterday. So really quite worrying there that we're seeing that. And we'll take a closer look at both the UK Gilt market and bond markets towards the end of this session. But that's where we start. Remembering that we start by looking at currencies, stock indices, commodities, and we'll look at the yields, and then last of all energy. So a lot going on in the markets. We've seen real big recoveries in a lot of the energy mix, and we'll cover that at the end. So first of all, we start by looking at the dollar index, and we see here that the dollar has really retreated. Of course, today is the day that the Federal Reserve make their decision. The inflation number yesterday down from 4.9% to 4% in May has really given them room to pause. And we ran a poll on this at the start of the week, and 60% of poll respondents out of 2,400 people, 60% of people felt that the Fed would actually sit, and that was actually before the inflation number had come out. So the market widely expects that, and that's having an impact on the dollar. There's likely no more raises in rates for the US now. We're starting to looking now at cuts towards the end of the year, and of course that has an impact on the dollar. And so we are still in the range here of 100, 105 on the dollar index. Just couldn't quite get above the cloud on the lagging line. Remember, this is my weekly, my daily, and my 60-minute chart with the corresponding point and figure targets on my long-term, medium-term, and short-term view. And we see that short-term bearishness really showing there. And that means that the euro is looking quite strong there at 108. And finding support on the cloud on the daily, through on the price, but not yet on the lagging line. And again, this bullish trend short term with some targets. This upside target quite significantly has been activated. The yen was a lead indicator, and we did see the dollar yen breaking higher. That's now looking like weaker yen rather than dollar strength, and because we're seeing that change in the dollar index. So reality is here that although we've broken the March high on the yen, we are still bullish on all three time frames. Dollar yen, so that means the yen is looking weak, of course. Looking at sterling, we're sitting at 126.43. Really, that's the big difference when we look back to that mini budget in the UK. The spectre of higher interest rates in the UK now really taking hold, and we've got big upside targets here. Sterling going much higher on that renewed interest rate outlook for the UK. The Bank of England in the UK really has no option. Inflation is much, much higher than in the US, and the market expects at least 2 more raises of UK rates, and maybe even a 50% raise when they next look at rates. So it's going to be quite interesting. Looking at the Nasdaq, we're bullish on all three time frames, bullish above the cloud. And of course, the market likes the fact that interest rates are off the cards, and we're just in bull mode. We've got 20% higher on the Nasdaq on the targets there, so really looking very strong indeed. And if we look at the futures, the S&P E-mini is looking higher. The S&P has broken convincingly that 4,200 level, and so we are seeing a move there. And if we look at the FTSE future, we're up 1/3%, but we are struggling versus the other markets. We are seeing a little bit of an improvement on the 60-minute chart today, breaking into bullish territory there, but really not looking anywhere near as good as the Nasdaq. And if we look at the DAX also similarly looking very strong indeed, bullish on all three time frames, upside targets activated. Looks like we're going quite a bit higher still based on the price targets. Japan looking stronger. That weaker yen really having an impact. We've been saying that Japan is one of the best looking markets this year, just rocketing and breaking out there, so really quite significant. Not so good for the Hang Seng. China and Hong Kong really still in long-term downtrends. India looking still pretty strong, just nudging new highs there with good upside targets, so that's really quite key. And the Aussie market has been an underperformer, just struggling again here on the daily cloud, and we can see here on the 60-minute chart really has struggled, but we are still bullish on the long-term chart. We'll look at the energy mix in a minute. We go straight to gold. Gold is sitting at 1951. Of course, the spectre of high inflation going off the cards has had a little bit of an impact on gold. This 1940 level is a critical support level. If we break below 1940, that's not good news, and we would activate a downside target much lower. We're still bullish on the long term and the medium term, but short term, we've got work to do. We need to break 1970. We are really in a range here, and we can just put those levels on the chart, and we see there that's the level that we've got to break. 1972, 1939. So really ones to watch there. Talking at silver, whilst we're below 25, it's not good news for silver. We are very similar charts to gold, of course. Now, looking at bond yields, we talked about the UK gilt yields, but looking at US bond yields, we are still looking pretty strong. Interestingly, yesterday we fell away on that interest rate spectre, but then rose. The market really just rebounded. So the 10-year is still looking pretty bullish. We've got upside targets to 4.2%, 4.25, and again a really big upside target to nearly 9%. Interestingly, on the short-term target, another one generated to 4.12. If we break above 385, we activate that. So certainly one to watch. Now, looking at the UK gilt yield, if we start by looking at the 10-year, we see here we've got targets to 5.16, 636, 636, two targets pointing to around 6.4%. And that, of course, would have a massive impact, another 2% on UK debt payable. So really quite key. Italy's one that I'm watching as well, just watching for the break out of this pattern. That's going to be really quite critical if that happens. So these markets still worth keeping an eye on. And again, we've got targets in both directions. A lot of uncertainty other than that UK one. So taking a look at the energy mix, we've got Brent crude this morning up 1%, $75. So looking a little bit happier there. A move below this $70 mark would not be good for Brent crude. And if we look at US nat gas, we're sitting at $2.33. Still got a lot of work to do to cross the daily cloud. This is my daily and my 60-minute. Daily, 60-minute, 1 minute. Very short term. These are what we use in the morning call to call the market ahead. Looking at the coal price, we're back well and truly above this 100 mark. We've recovered really quite sharply there, but not enough to put us into bullish trends on either the daily or the 60-minute. We do have upside targets considerably higher, 134, 148, 146, but you really got to watch for a move above the cloud there. 120 would do it on API 2 probably, and of course we would hit resistance on the longer term at around 140, which is roughly where these targets are at. Emissions, this has been a fascinating story. We did put a poll out on emissions, and in fact this is what the markets, we put this poll out at the start of the month, and 80% of the market saw carbon emissions lower, and this is what's happened since. So it just shows you that you really can't rely on the consensus, and the market has done what the consensus didn't believe possible. We've gone from in the 70s back into the 90s, really zooming here, just hitting some resistance on the daily cloud. We've got upside targets here, 93.30, 94.30. We gave these in our morning call to clients this morning, looking really significant, and that 138 target is still in place, and we're going to get a new one here. I can cheat and actually just put that on now. So we are going to get 123.71 if this column locks here, but of course if the column keeps growing, that's going to get bigger. So really one to watch there. Gas prices have been another one that have been very interesting, really showing strong recovery, not yet on the daily, but we're seeing these higher highs, higher lows, really found the floor at around 22.50, and again we've got mixed targets today, which is why we're neutral out to clients, and the same for MBP, of course, following TTF. Some downside targets just playing in today, so it looks like we might just pull back some of that big rise that we saw yesterday. Last of all, German power, that's been looking bullish as well, as has Nordic power, and breaking higher along with those gas prices. No big surprises there, but looks like we've seen the bottom in European energy prices. That's it for today. Until next time, happy charting. Hang in there. Bye for now.